When self-sabotage is just a form of self-protection, we're witnessing one of the most profound psychological defense mechanisms that the human mind has developed over millions of years of evolution. This isn't about weakness or personal failure, as many of us have been conditioned to believe. Instead, it's about a deeply intelligent system within us that learned, often very early in life, that certain behaviors could keep us safe from pain, rejection, or overwhelming experiences. The work of trauma specialist Gabor Maté reveals that what we often label as self-destructive behavior is actually our psyche's attempt to maintain some sense of control and safety in a world that once felt unpredictable or threatening. Understanding this shift in perspective can be transformative because it moves us from self-judgment into self-compassion, from seeing ourselves as broken to recognizing ourselves as adaptive survivors who developed sophisticated coping mechanisms. The human brain is remarkably designed to prioritize survival above all else, and this includes emotional survival. When we were children, our developing minds absorbed not just what was said to us, but the emotional climate we lived in. If love felt conditional, if we had to perform to receive attention, if we learned that being too much led to rejection, our nervous system began creating strategies to avoid those painful experiences. These strategies often involve making ourselves smaller, sabotaging opportunities before others can reject us, or creating chaos as a way to feel some sense of control over our environment. What's fascinating is that these patterns can persist well into adulthood, even when our external circumstances have completely changed and we're surrounded by people who genuinely care about us. Self-sabotage often shows up as procrastination when we're on the verge of success, as picking fights with partners who love us, or as abandoning projects just before they come to fruition. It might manifest as addictive behaviors that we know are harming us, or as negative self-talk that seems to come out of nowhere. But when we look deeper, these behaviors aren't random acts of self-destruction, they're protective mechanisms that once served a purpose. Perhaps failing before others could reject us felt safer than risking genuine vulnerability. Maybe creating chaos felt more familiar than peace, because chaos was what we knew growing up. Or perhaps we learned that being successful meant being alone, so we unconsciously create situations that keep us from reaching our full potential. The protective nature of self-sabotage becomes clearer when we understand that trauma isn't just about dramatic events. Gabor Maté's work emphasizes that trauma is not what happens to us, but what happens inside us as a result of what happens to us. This means that even seemingly minor childhood experiences, like feeling invisible in a busy household, or receiving the message that our emotions were too much for others to handle, can create lasting imprints on our nervous system. These imprints then influence our adult behaviors in ways that can seem puzzling or frustrating, but they make perfect sense when viewed through the lens of protection and survival. Consider the person who consistently arrives late to important meetings or social gatherings. On the surface, this might look like disrespect or poor time management, but underneath, there might be a part of them that learned early on that showing up fully meant risking disappointment or criticism. Being late creates a buffer zone, a way to control the level of engagement and maintain some emotional distance. It's a form of self-protection that says, I can't be fully rejected if I never fully show up. This pattern might have developed in childhood when showing enthusiasm or excitement was met with dismissal, or when their presence seemed to create tension in the family system.
The same protective mechanism can be seen in people who sabotage romantic relationships just when things start getting serious. This isn't about not wanting love or connection, quite the opposite. It's often about wanting love so desperately that the fear of losing it becomes overwhelming. The unconscious mind calculates that it's safer to end things on their own terms rather than risk the devastating pain of abandonment. This pattern might trace back to early experiences of inconsistent caregiving, where love felt conditional or where emotional needs were met unpredictably. The adult relationship becomes a trigger for those old wounds, and self-sabotage emerges as a misguided attempt at self-preservation. What makes this understanding so powerful is that it immediately shifts our relationship with these behaviors. Instead of fighting against ourselves or trying to force different outcomes through willpower alone, we can begin to approach our patterns with curiosity and compassion. We can start to see the wounded parts of ourselves that are still trying to keep us safe, even when their methods no longer serve us. This doesn't mean we excuse harmful behaviors or avoid taking responsibility for our actions. Rather, it means we approach change from a place of understanding rather than self-attack, which ironically makes lasting transformation much more possible. The body plays a crucial role in these protective patterns because trauma lives in our nervous system, not just in our thoughts. When we're triggered by a situation that reminds our unconscious mind of past pain, our body can react as if that original threat is happening right now. This might show up as sudden anxiety when things are going well, as physical tension when we're about to take a risk, or as an overwhelming urge to escape or create distance when we're feeling connected to someone. These somatic responses often drive self-sabotaging behaviors because our body is literally trying to get us away from perceived danger, even when our rational mind knows we're safe. Understanding the nervous system's role in self-sabotage helps explain why simply trying to think our way out of these patterns rarely works. Our protective mechanisms operate from the limbic system, the emotional brain, which processes information much faster than our rational thinking brain. By the time we're consciously aware of what's happening, our body has already initiated its protective response. This is why healing often requires approaches that work with the body and nervous system, not just cognitive understanding. Practices like breathwork, movement, meditation, and somatic therapy can help regulate the nervous system and create new neural pathways that support healthier responses to stress and trigger situations. The intergenerational aspect of these patterns adds another layer of complexity and compassion to our understanding. The ways our parents and caregivers learned to protect themselves were often passed down to us, not through conscious teaching, but through the emotional atmosphere we grew up in. If our parents struggled with their own self-worth, if they had difficulty receiving good things in their lives, or if they carried their own trauma responses, we absorb these patterns as normal. This doesn't mean we're doomed to repeat these cycles, but it does mean that changing them requires patience and understanding of their deep roots. We're not just healing our own wounds, but often interrupting patterns that may have been present in our family systems for generations.
The perfectionism that drives many forms of self-sabotage is another protective strategy that deserves our understanding rather than our criticism. When we learned that making mistakes led to criticism, rejection, or even abandonment, our mind developed the strategy of trying to be perfect as a way to earn love and acceptance. But perfectionism is an impossible standard that inevitably leads to disappointment and shame. When we can't maintain the perfect image, we might swing to the opposite extreme and engage in behaviors that confirm our worst fears about ourselves. This all-or-nothing thinking is a trauma response that tries to create certainty in an uncertain world, but it often keeps us trapped in cycles of striving and self-attack. Recovery from self-sabotage isn't about eliminating these protective parts of ourselves, but rather about developing a healthy relationship with them. It's about recognizing when they're activated and learning to respond from our adult self rather than our wounded child self. This process requires developing what Gabor Maté calls compassionate curiosity toward our own patterns. Instead of asking, "Why do I keep doing this to myself?" we might ask, "What is this behavior trying to protect me from?" Or, "What did this part of me learn about safety that made this response seem necessary?" This shift in questioning opens up space for understanding and healing rather than self-judgment and shame. Now, I want to pause here and ask you something important. As you're listening to this,
Have you noticed any patterns in your own life that might actually be forms of self-protection rather than self-sabotage? Maybe there's an area where you consistently hold yourself back, or a relationship pattern that keeps repeating itself, or a way you respond to success or good things in your life that surprises even you. Take a moment to consider this with compassion rather than judgment. What might these patterns be trying to protect you from? And I want to thank you for being here, for taking the time to explore these deeper questions about human behavior and healing. Your willingness to look at these topics with openness and curiosity is already a step toward greater self-understanding and compassion. The journey of recognizing and healing these protective patterns often involves grieving. We need to grieve the childhood we didn't have, the safety we didn't feel, the unconditional love that might have been missing. This grief is not about blaming our parents or caregivers, who were likely doing the best they could with their own wounds and limitations. Rather, it's about acknowledging the impact of our early experiences and honoring the pain that created our protective responses. This grieving process is actually a form of healing because it allows us to feel and release emotions that have been stored in our body for years or even decades. As we develop awareness of these patterns, we might notice that they often intensify before they begin to shift. This is because our unconscious mind perceives change as a threat to our survival, even when that change would clearly benefit us. The part of us that learned to self-sabotage as protection will often ramp up its efforts when it senses we're trying to do things differently. This is completely normal and actually a sign that we're touching something real and important. Understanding this can help us stay compassionate with ourselves during the difficult parts of the healing process, rather than taking increased symptoms as evidence that we're doing something wrong.
The role of safety in healing cannot be overstated. Our nervous system needs to feel genuinely safe before it will allow us to release old protective patterns. This safety isn't just physical, but emotional and relational as well. It might mean finding trustworthy people to support us in our healing journey, creating consistent routines that help regulate our nervous system, or developing practices that help us feel grounded and present in our bodies. Without this foundation of safety, our system will continue to default to familiar protective strategies, even when we consciously want to change. Building new neural pathways requires repetition and patience. Just as our protective patterns were developed through repeated experiences, healing happens through repeated experiences of safety, connection, and successful navigation of challenging situations. Each time we choose a different response, each time we stay present when we want to flee, each time we practice self-compassion when we want to self-attack, we're literally rewiring our brain. This process can feel slow and sometimes frustrating, but it's the only way to create lasting change that comes from the inside out, rather than being imposed from the outside in. The relationship between self-sabotage and boundaries is particularly important to understand. Many people who engage in self-sabotaging behaviors struggle with boundaries because they never learned that they had the right to say no, to have preferences, or to protect their energy. When we don't have healthy boundaries, we might use self-sabotage as a crude form of boundary setting. For example, someone might consistently show up late as a way of controlling how much energy they give to situations, or they might create conflict as a way of creating distance when they feel overwhelmed. Learning to set healthy boundaries can often reduce the need for these more destructive forms of self-protection. And here's where I want to share something that might make you smile and also reflect on the power of small actions. If this perspective on self-sabotage is resonating with you, if it's helping you see your own patterns with more compassion, would you mind giving this video a like? I know it sounds simple, but that little act of appreciation actually helps more people find this content when they need it most. And who knows, maybe your like will be the one that helps someone else discover that their self-sabotage is actually their inner protector trying to keep them safe. It's amazing how these small gestures of support can ripple out and touch lives we'll never even know about. The healing process often involves learning to dialogue with these protective parts of ourselves.
Instead of trying to eliminate them, we can learn to communicate with them, to understand their concerns, and to negotiate new agreements about how to handle challenging situations. This internal dialogue might sound something like, "Thank you for trying to protect me by making me late to this important meeting. I understand you're worried that if I show up fully, I might get hurt like I did when I was young. But I want you to know that I'm an adult now and I have skills and resources I didn't have then. What if we tried showing up on time and seeing what happens? I promise I'll take care of us if things get difficult."
The concept of earned security is particularly hopeful in this context. Even if we didn't receive the consistent, attuned care we needed as children, we can develop secure attachment patterns as adults through healing relationships and consistent self-care practices. This means that our early experiences don't have to determine our entire life trajectory. We can learn to be the secure, compassionate parent to ourselves that we needed when we were young. This internal reparenting process can gradually reduce the need for self-sabotaging behaviors because we develop internal resources for safety and soothing. Understanding the difference between healthy self-protection and self-sabotage is crucial for healing. Healthy self-protection involves setting boundaries, saying no to situations that don't serve us, taking time to process our emotions, and making choices based on our authentic needs and values. Self-sabotage, on the other hand, involves behaviors that ultimately harm us or prevent us from living fully, even if they provide temporary relief from anxiety or fear. The goal isn't to eliminate our protective instincts, but to refine them so they truly serve our well-being, rather than limiting our potential. The role of community and connection in healing these patterns cannot be understated. Many self-sabotaging behaviors developed in the context of relationships, and they often heal in the context of relationships as well. This doesn't mean we need to have perfect relationships or that we can't heal without others. But it does mean that experiences of being seen, accepted, and valued for who we are, rather than what we do, can be profoundly healing for the parts of us that learn to protect ourselves through self-sabotage. These corrective experiences help our nervous system learn that connection can be safe, and that we don't have to perform or diminish ourselves to be loved. Forgiveness plays a complex role in this healing process, and it's important to understand that forgiveness is not about excusing harmful behavior or pretending that painful experiences didn't matter. Rather, forgiveness in this context is about releasing the grip that past experiences have on our present moment choices. It's about recognizing that holding on to resentment and self-blame keeps us stuck in old patterns. This forgiveness often needs to extend to ourselves as well as others. We need to forgive ourselves for the ways we've unknowingly perpetuated our own suffering through self-sabotaging behaviors, understanding that we were doing the best we could with the resources and awareness we had at the time. The integration of these insights into daily life requires both gentleness and persistence. Change rarely happens in a straight line, and setbacks are a normal part of the process. When we find ourselves falling back into old patterns, the most healing response is curiosity rather than criticism. What was happening in our life when the pattern got activated? What might our system have perceived as threatening? How can we respond to ourselves with the same compassion we would show a good friend who was struggling? This approach creates the internal safety necessary for lasting change and prevents us from adding additional trauma to our system through self-attack. As we near the end of our exploration today, I want to offer a reflection on the profound courage it takes to examine these patterns in ourselves. Looking at our self-sabotaging behaviors with honesty and compassion requires tremendous bravery because it means facing parts of our story that might be painful or difficult to acknowledge. But this willingness to look deeply is exactly what creates the possibility for transformation. When we can see our self-sabotage as protection rather than pathology, when we can approach our patterns with curiosity rather than judgment, we create space for healing that goes beyond just changing behaviors. We create the possibility for a fundamentally different relationship with ourselves, one based on understanding, compassion, and genuine self-care. The ultimate message here is one of hope and empowerment. Your self-sabotaging behaviors don't define you as broken or damaged. They represent the incredible intelligence of your survival system, the creative ways your psyche learned to navigate a world that sometimes felt unsafe or unpredictable. As you've grown and changed, as you've developed new skills and resources, you can now choose different responses while honoring the part of you that worked so hard to keep you safe. This integration of your protective instincts with your adult wisdom is where true healing lives. It's not about becoming someone completely different, but about becoming more fully yourself, with all your parts working together in harmony rather than in conflict. So as we conclude this journey together today, I want to thank you for the attention and openness you've brought to this exploration. If these ideas have sparked something in you, if they've helped you see your own patterns with new eyes, or given you a different framework for understanding your inner world, I'd love to hear about it. Consider leaving a comment, sharing your thoughts or experiences if you feel moved to do so. Your insights might be exactly what someone else needs to hear on their own healing journey. And if you found value in this perspective, there's another video appearing on your screen that dives even deeper into related themes. Feel free to check it out if you're curious to continue this exploration. Until next time, remember that every step towards self-understanding is a step toward freedom, and your willingness to look at these deeper patterns with compassion is already a profound act of healing. Take care of yourself. And if you feel called to join our community here at Not What It Seems, we'd be honored to have you along for this journey of discovery and growth.